Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. And today we are now in 3.17.2. And I have played it for about an hour. The mission that I'm doing is the mission where, if you're a criminal, you have access to retrieve the organs from the organ chop shop ship, which happens to be a reclaimer. Awesome. And return them to the medical department at Grim Hex. Reward 73,000 credits, as was presented to me. Of course, reputations, things like that are now in the game, perhaps will amp these things up in the future. We'll have to look into this. But I wanna talk about this mission because as the missions have kind of evolved, certainly since the very early days of Star Citizen, I have to say that they have gotten better. And this mission was great. It was absolutely great because, of course, doing it solo, and there's a few other things I could have been a little bit better prepared with, but it is what it is. I mean, I literally had flown over here from Lorville, moved all my stuff that was relevant, and then said, hey, let's take this mission, let's see what happens. And there was kind of a direct route and an indirect route. Of course, you can just go right in, guns blazing. The Reclaimer's there lying in space. It's the Nine Tails. It's been taken out by local security. But if you turn off the satellite with the Tiger Claws, which once again you can purchase from Rudos. I don't know, maybe it was just me and I had a bug, but I wasn't able to purchase them in the previous patch at Rudos. They would just not highlight a price or give me a buy option, even though you can see them in the glass there. So the only chips that I had access to were the ones that I would find in missions. So now that that option is once again on the table, and was one of the first things that I checked, I opted for the take out the satellite, then take out the guards, and then bust into the ship. And that worked out pretty good in the beginning. Now, of course, hacking the satellite, everything we've seen in the past. Of course, there were changes so that you can go in and hack a satellite. You can enter the restricted area. The satellite shoots at you, but you can still scurry in real close and tight to the satellite if you have a small enough ship and not get shot. And then you can basically bust into the satellite, hack it down. You don't gain crime stat for that, and then you can kind of go along and get to your criminal business. Now, of course, once you got this done, you can fly to the location, or if you don't care about crime stat, you can skip it and just go straight here. As you get closer, all of a sudden you find the NPCs guarding the ship, the Crusader security guys, but once again, satellite's off, so we don't have to worry about crime stat. And they are the usual flat-footed and utterly incompetent NPC law enforcement ships. So no big deal here. And I kind of want to say that they're disappointing. I had hoped that there would perhaps be a more challenging ship, but of course the most challenging part about it was actually running out of Scorpion ammo and going like, oh yeah, I should have changed my guns. And also the fact that it's manned by that camera that I'm seeing on my display by an invisible man. Interesting. But yeah, apart from that, no real challenge here. Easily dispatched, and we move on to breaking into the ship. Now, exploring and fighting on a reclaimer. I kind of feel like we've been prepared for this for quite some time. Being a reclaimer owner and having spent so many hours running around in one, wishing that it could salvage. I knew where to go, what to look for. I knew about the gallery up above the salvage area, and truth be told, I probably should have cleared it out. And if the game were operating at a higher level, that would probably prove to be necessary, clearing out that upper deck. prior to going in, but the NPCs up there just hadn't noticed me. And yeah, I mean, you can walk around. There's quite a lot of loot to be had. Guns, weapons, items, equipment. There's quite a haul to be had here, but I was a man on a mission, and I wanted to get that mission done, right? So I just kind of blitzed right through it. Now, there are a couple of things to kind of highlight here if you're going to try and do this mission. When you first walk in, there's going to be a slightly different enemy or a slightly different Ninetail right here, right in front of me. I think you'll see him any second now, right there. And just beside his hand is a data pad. That data pad is relevant to completing the mission. There's 2 codes listed on that data pad. It is the second one. Now, of course, servers operating the way they do, NPCs seemingly non-reacting to hostile presences. This is kind of where, you know, in my earlier comment about fighting the NPCs, I don't know. I kind of feel like we're not really getting an accurate picture of how the NPCs would be performing as they are programmed if the game were running more reliably. And this is kind of one of these places where we say, you know, we're not really sure if the criticism is entirely relevant to the way they're being designed or the way the servers are performing, because that can give you a false picture. We've talked about this in the past in many videos. And once again, this is it. All right. So I was still trying to figure this out at this point. I hadn't figured out, if this was in the mission description, like, oh, by the way, the code for the crate is, 6969. It isn't. It may be the same code over and over again. If you're doing this and you're just trying to get through it quick, 6977. So if you're trying to remember it after you watch this video, just think 69, nice, and 77, the year Star Wars came out. But once again, this could be dynamic and it could change depending on your instance and this, how the mission is spawned. It could be any combination. But if it stays true, that's how to do it. This is not the guy with the data pad. What I was doing is I was searching through all the bodies and I was looking for a data pad or anything that might have the code, because as I walked on, I didn't really notice it. And of course, I'm not really going to stay here to just start picking through all the loot. It is what it is, right? Beyond a certain point, I think that you have to kind of look at the situation you're in, of course, tactically, and the people that you have on site. If you're going with a team, maybe you can designate a few people to just running loot. But you have to remember, especially when you're doing criminal things, the clock is always ticking. The clock is really always ticking. I think this was the biggest thing that I grabbed. I just grabbed one of the SMGs and a reflex sight. And I was just like, oh, okay, you know what? Those always come in handy just in case. I like the C-54, so there you go. Not a big fan of the way it lights up, though, but it is what it is. But having kind of gone through all these guys, I finally did happen to find the one dude who had the data pad, and once I noticed it there on the ground, this kind of comes to the point where we have to kind of criticize. This inspection system, this personal interaction system that we have in Star Citizen is a total disaster. We've talked about this system before. We've talked about the problems. There are so many things in the foreground that a player can confuse with a different object, holding your gun and holding a package and trying to open up a door, things like that. It is less than ideal. And I just have to say that I understand the developer's intent, but unfortunately, intent doesn't match outcome here. And when you're trying to do things on the move, and it seems like the NPCs are sort of picking up on the fact that you're there, but it's sort of not picking up on the fact that you're there. I'm talking about the 2 guys on the catwalk up above. it can make things very tense. And of course, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to race and get it done. And this is like the first time I saw it, I just looked at the top code and went, oh, that's it. And you'll see me start to panic because I hadn't figured out which code it was yet. Because obviously I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to look for 4 digits and then just run with it and then go, oh, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? But I left it in just because it's kind of a fun highlight, kind of a fun blooper or, stupid moment. But once again, interacting with objects in the game, because of the way we are in a first person, kind of locked in a first person view, and the way we interact with objects, and all the objects that we wear on ourselves, that we carry in our hands, all these things occupy these different conflicting spaces that make them very difficult to interact with. And sometimes it's actually better to go into the personal inventory system and pull things out and inspect them that way. And so slowly I'm going to figure this out. But yeah, having all these things and all these different possible interactables, I have to say it's just overwrought and overdone. I'm sorry. It could entirely be implemented in a much better fashion. There are many other games out there that do a much better job. And I realize that this is probably something that is relevant to, Squadron 42 and the way that is being built out, so that you can go, oh, when you talk to Lieutenant Summers, by the way, Lieutenant Summers, I like you. I don't like you. I should let this guy talk. I shouldn't let this guy talk. For conversational options, that's fine. But when we're interacting with items on our person, the system is super cumbersome when we're trying to hold a gun and interact with something in front of us with these buttons. As you can see, like packages that you're carrying in your hand can get in the way. I think that we need to revisit this idea. And I'm not saying totally kill it and replace it, but I think that it needs a serious rework. Now, the good news is that serious rework might have already been done, because that could be the product of what they're working on in Squadron 42. And so who knows, maybe at some point in the future, as Star Citizen catches up with the current state of Squadron 42, all this criticism could be irrelevant. It could have been fixed. They could have noticed the mistake and just kind of said, well, let's not give those dicks on YouTube more fuel to burn us with, and instead let's just kind of quietly fix it and then just move on and ignore the comments. It's possible. But apart from that, long story short, we have broken away. We've pulled it off. We've done it. And it was in that moment when I was jockeying for the code, and now that I'm kind of watching this footage back, it felt like I was in there a lot longer. And the time was actually moving pretty quickly, and that is the sign of a good mission. And now some of it, of course, is environmental. The constant fear of somebody else coming to interfere with the mission, or more NPC police showing up and your ship's just out there floating. All of these things, someone being out there and just kind of waiting, in ambush on your ship because you stupidly left the door open when you flew out there. But then again, leaving that door open might allow you to get back into your ship just that 1 millisecond quick enough to allow you to escape. It's hard to tell with these things sometimes, and easy to make excuses and, after the fact when you've had time to think about it. But overall, there are still issues with 17.2, but they are issues that largely persisted from the last build as well. Now, I know that there was some tests where they were like, oh my god, we can get 100 players into an instance now. It's happening. It's working. We'll talk about that at some point in the future. Of course, we will talk about the new version of the Ballista, the Centurion in the future. in the future, I think that, the quick and dirty version of it is, in the future, I think that it is certainly a vehicle that could be useful in defending a fixed location. As a vehicle in the current game, we still lack the navigation tools planet-side to take those things over long distance. There are very few ships that can carry them. So that, of course, is one of the big things. You might look at it and say, hey, man, this is a really great ship. Or someone at CIG might have said, hey, this is a really great vehicle. We can sell this. And then not fully grasping the fact that it's a vehicle that is entirely dependent on another vehicle, which is very expensive. And so I understand where you're trying to go here. And this is probably more of the inheritance of Theaters of War, which is, of course, the air quotes, still in development, I guess, expansion to Star Marine, which, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's still in development. I think it's something that they've just said, yeah, we'll get back to that later. I'm kind of disappointed in it. I think it's just kind of like, hey, we got this. Let's put this in the game. And that's kind of what it felt like. The turret placement is a little bit low, and therefore I could see it being a little bit of a problem when you're trying to fire the guns forward. But realistically, the use for it, I think, will manifest itself maybe in 2 to 3 years in Star Citizen. But right now, kind of a paperweight. But apart from that, overall, 17.2, I liked it. I liked the mission. I want to explore more of these missions. I want to see more of what, pops up in the game. I overall had a good experience playing in 17.2. Of course, you have to do the usual log in, get everything to load in, and then log out and exit the game, and then log back in for things to run a little bit more smoothly, but it's all to be expected, Had a good time. 17.2 so far. An hour into it, 2 thumbs up. It works. Had fun. Mission was tense and a very interesting experience. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.